It's the Wheel of Fortune!
Welcome to the Wheel of Fortune.
Oh my god, this is the best pack opening ever! I'm literally... What do I even do?
Welcome to FIFA Bingo. Yes, we're back for another episode.
We've put a pretty sick squad around him from various leagues. We've got Ligue 1, we've got Serie A, we've got the Swiss League.
We have started your ultimate team for FIFA 15.
What's happening, boys, and welcome to
the young episode.
10 years ago, FIFA 15 was released. A full decade has passed since one of the best FIFAs of all time came out, and with it came great content, nostalgia, and a video game actually worth playing. But that was then. We are now on to FC 25 with an entirely new generation of consoles and a generation of players who probably never had a chance to play this great game. The opposite is true as well, that a good amount of people who played FIFA 15 might not be playing FC 25. Many people might not know if we've progressed since that game or if we've even regressed. Does FIFA 15 hold up to the standards of modern FIFA titles through content, game modes, music, gameplay, or any other criteria that you could judge? So let's take a closer look at FIFA 15 to see if it truly was good, or if we're just looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. Starting with the game modes, there are not a lot of differences with what you can do inside of the game back then compared to now. FIFA 15 still had the three main modes with Ultimate Team, Career Mode, and Pro Clubs, and there were still online seasons, kickoff, and tournament modes as well. And while it's true that other games that followed 15 had things like The Journey, Volta, or Rush, 15 had something that the others didn't. Match Day Live. Essentially, this was a hub that kept you up to date on different league tables, statistics, and even news articles in the real world of football. And this didn't just involve the top 5 major leagues, it involved virtually every single club inside of FIFA. And if there was a prominent matchup happening that week, you could play as one of those clubs in the matchup and earn XP that could go towards career mode or pro clubs or even ultimate team. Now look, I won't try to convince you guys that this was the greatest feature of all time. It was essentially a glorified kickoff. It certainly wasn't better than Rush or The Journey or Volta. Well, it was probably better than Volta. However, it was a neat little feature that could actually keep people up to date about what was happening in the world of football. And during this time, when sport was beginning to become more popular in the United States, it would actually be a great way to have people learn more about it. In fact, the whole reason why I'm an Arsenal fan to begin with, or why I even like the sport, is because of FIFA. And while this sport has certainly become more accessible since then, especially in the United States, it would still be nice to have this feature and potentially broaden the horizons of new fans. Overall, the general game modes have stayed about the same over the past decade, with perhaps newer versions having a couple more options, but FIFA 15 still holds its own, and again, Match Day Live would still be nice to have. Now moving on to career mode, this is something I don't usually talk about when I upload a FIFA video, but that's actually the thing that got me into FIFA to begin with, so mentioning FIFA 15's career mode, it was actually damn fun. First of all, the general layout just seems more simple and clean, while also being more vibrant and colorful. You can navigate where you want to go quickly and easily, and most importantly, you can actually see what the hell is going on. Like, am I supposed to know what I'm doing here? How can you guys see this? Our UI is an aesthetic upgrade. I don't think that a single person is happy about the current career mode UI. Moving on, yes, the career mode menu for FIFA 15 was nice, but what about the important things, like the features? Looking back, it was not too bad, but certainly right now has a lot more depth. Now, props to FIFA 15 for having some of the league licenses like FC 25, so the presentation was great, but it also still lacked any UEFA licenses, something that we were begging for back then. There was also no sports media in FIFA 15, there was less hands-on player development, and there was less in-depth scouting. There are also a few glitches back then, just like there are today, like how if you waited until May to sign someone from your youth academy, their starting overall would be significantly higher than if you waited before May. Saying that, some of the features in FC 25 don't exactly work that well, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. with some complaining that after a few years, career mode is just difficult to continue playing. Transfers and AI squad building seem to be just as bogus as they were back in the day, which is really sad considering that that's been a problem for over a decade, and the unique scouting that I talked about before is actually just not as promising as it looks, as the player pool for these smaller nations only gives one last name and completely ruins the immersion. So in terms of career mode, it's actually a little bit up in the air. Now there's certainly more features nowadays, but a lot of it tends to be on the surface, and some of the ones that do promise more depth just don't really work, failing to deliver on the promises that it made. Compare this to FIFA 15, which does have less overall features, but those said features tend to work more properly than they do now. There's still some problems, of course, but it's almost like there's less stuff for EA to mess up, so the game mode is more put together. Now, in my opinion, I believe that less is more and that quality is more important than quantity. So for that reason, FIFA 15's career mode does actually tend to hold up and arguably even be better in a few areas. Now for pro clubs, I think it's pretty easy to figure out if FIFA 15's version holds up or not. Nowadays, you have a level of customization that borders on the insane, which I'm not complaining about because more customization is definitely better. Custom players, custom attire, custom clubs, custom kits, custom stadiums, custom AI. I'm surprised there isn't a custom intro cutscene where players can do obscene things to each other. Not to mention, you have things like facilities that can upgrade your players and teammates even more as you progress through the ranks. You can increase the amount of fans that your club has, which is a fun way to see how big your club becomes. And of course, it has the new game mode Rush. All of that is just from FC 25. Compare that to FIFA 15, where the biggest feature they put in back then was readying up for the next match. Yeah, FIFA 15 Pro Clubs f***ing sucked. We were dying out there. Now moving on to Ultimate Team, I don't think it'll be too much of a surprise when I say that the FIFA 15 version of Ultimate Team was flat out amazing. Now in the past, we've discussed the power curve of new games, as well as the oversaturation of promos, a bad balance of game modes, and a few other things as well. FIFA 15, without a doubt, has a lot of the newer versions beat with Ultimate Team because it was able to do a lot of these things well, despite not having SBCs, rivals, foot champs, or rush, again showing that quality is more important than quantity. However, it would be disingenuous to not mention the absolutely huge mistake in FIFA 15 Ultimate Team, something that wasn't nearly as bad in other games as it was in this one. And that was price ranges. Obviously, price ranges are still a thing to this day, but if you think that they're bad now, consider yourself lucky you didn't have to suffer through those horrors. On March 9th, 2015, price ranges were introduced into FIFA Ultimate Team, and in classic EA fashion, they implemented them horribly. The actual price ranges of these players were so small that many would be extinct and you'd have to spend hours upon hours trying to snipe one of them. I still remember spending 3 hours a night for a week trying to snipe this team this season, Eremenko. It was too much. And this wasn't something that led to a handful of cards being extinct like you see now. No. You would have literally hundreds of desirable cards completely off the market with no way to get them, regardless of how many coins you had. And this was when you could get 100 million coins for $50. Now, was this the most important thing in the game? Hell, was this even the most important thing in Ultimate Team? No, it wasn't. You could still play the game, try out different game modes, and try different cards, but even so, it left a huge stain on the game, something that even newer versions of FIFA don't have to deal with nearly as often. And finally, we have the gameplay of FIFA 15, and I could go on and on about all of things I've talked about with newer FIFAs when I compare them to older ones. The speed of the game was faster back then, there was a lot less inconsistent gameplay, the attacking AI was better. All of these things you've heard me repeat at least a dozen times by now, so I don't need to really go into them again. But there's one thing that I haven't really talked about that much, or maybe even ever, when I talk about older FIFAs, and that's the simplicity of the gameplay. It seems like every year there's a new gameplay mechanic that's introduced, usually in a half-assed way that's either broken or completely useless, but you know, that's besides the point. The main point is that the core gameplay mechanics start to suffer when these smaller, newer controls enter into the game. I mean, just look at the controls list of FC25. You of course have the basic stuff with passing, crossing, shooting, maybe a few simple variations of each mechanic like driven passes, which fair enough, but then you get into things like disguised first touches, directional runs, precision passing, precision swerve ground pass, and this is just for attacking. How does this compare to FIFA 15 now? I actually don't remember it being that simple. Seriously though, the controls list for FIFA 15 and some of the older FIFAs is a lot less convoluted and doesn't have a lot of this fluff that the newer versions have. Now there are obviously some controls that were great additions, like the driven ground pass that I would be completely lost with if I didn't have. And I'm not saying that every game needs to be stripped away to only 2 buttons. In fact, there are many games that are extremely complicated and still popular, like Crusader Kings and every single fighting game that's ever been created. However, you can also have very popular and well-made games with simplified controls too. In my opinion, refining the core gameplay mechanics should be of the utmost importance to the developers, with these smaller, newer additions being kind of a second thought. The core gameplay mechanics in FIFA have been going downhill the past few years, with random stuff happening like misplaced passes to a player that's literally 3 yards away. Part of the reason why stuff like this happens is because of the focus on smaller controls rather than the base mechanics. Now I know some people will say that more controls will add to a higher skill gap, but one, that doesn't exactly pan out when the actual mechanic hinders the skill gap, goalkeeper movement, and two, if they're not implemented properly to begin with, that also will hinder the skill gap. Meanwhile, FIFA 15 had a really nice balance between simplicity and complexity. If you wanted to learn every control in the game, from all of the skill moves to early crosses, you would have the time to do so and would be rewarded with winning games. On the flip side, if you just wanted to use the basic controls and read the game through attacking movements, you could do that too and also be rewarded. It was a game that genuinely allowed players to try different things and succeed, whether those things involve trying different formations, different tactics, different playstyles, or different cards. And all of it came from a set of good base mechanics and a good balance between simplicity and complexity. Now I know that some of you have wondered how FIFA players could have even played the game back then, when there weren't rivals or champs games to grind, new promos every week, or daily SBCs to take away your coins. You want to know the reason why? The gameplay was the reason why. We didn't need rivals or champs. We didn't need insane pro club additions, although, I mean, we would have appreciated them though. We didn't need half-assed career mode features, and we didn't need content so regularly that if nothing was released at 6 o'clock, many of us would immediately log off at 6:01. It didn't matter if your team wasn't the best, because if your skill was good enough, it would usually shine through in-game. And it also didn't matter that the graphics were not the most hyper-realistic thing imaginable, as if that has any genuine importance nowadays. Again, I'm calling you graphics freaks out. They do not matter. Please shut up. FIFA 15 was in a time period that still focused on good, quality gameplay, so even though there were many problems, it still seems to hold up against some of the newer versions of the game, especially gameplay-wise. That's why that even a decade after it was released, FIFA 15 is still considered one of the best FIFAs of all time, and in my opinion, the best FIFA of all time. You know, if FIFA 94 wasn't the best of all time. You could run away from a ref giving you a card. That cannot be beat.